What is up, 3D people? I just wanted to go over a kind of quick introduction to Substance Designer and how to create abstract materials in Designer. There is a really great introduction to the basics of Substance Designer on YouTube through their channel, and I recommend taking some time to check that out because it's really useful. But I think I wanted more information about how to create kind of abstract materials, and I didn't find a lot of resources in general about Substance Designer when I started looking, and especially not about kind of what I wanted to do in terms of creating abstract materials and things like that. So let me show you a quick example of a render I did with a material I created in Substance Designer that is kind of just an abstract, fun material I made, and I think it turned out pretty well. And so I'll just kind of go over some basics of how I created things like this in Substance Designer, and maybe then we can walk through the Cinema 4D file as well. So yeah, let's get started. So when you open up Substance Designer, you'll be met with this kind of blank sort of interface staring back at you, which is always a little bit confusing or overwhelming when you open a new piece of software because you don't know what anything does. And I think the easiest way is to get started is to just go up here, click on this add button to create a new substance graph, and just create an empty graph and set your resolution. So once you do that, I think things start to become more understandable. You've got this graph, which is your working area. You have over here is a library of just all of the different nodes and functions that you can use. Some of those are represented up here as well as just quick buttons. And then you have a 3D view and a 2D view. So if you are in the workspace and you press tab, you can access any of the nodes at your disposal. So for abstract materials and procedural abstract materials, noise is going to be the basis of pretty much like everything you're doing, right? So let's add in a noise, and you can see the output of any node that you're working on in the 2D view, and you can see all of the attributes associated with that node over here in the attribute menu, and they're all exposed for you to play around with. So for this noise, we can see we have some options here to modify how it looks, and if we want to see this in the 3D view, we just have to click right click and view in 3D view, and we have to tell it which material channel it should be interpreting these grayscale values as. So we're just going to say base color for now because we just want to see something here. So yeah, that's kind of like just the basics of the interface, right? So yeah. And quick disclaimer, I don't claim to be any sort of expert at Substance Designer. I've just played around with it a little bit and been able to start to accomplish some of the things that I want to in terms of material creation. So kind of maybe leading the blind a little bit here, but the fundamental way that Designer seems to work to me is just chaining together a sequence of steps that lead to an output, and within those steps you're able to go back and change anything at any point, which is great when you're kind of just trying to be creative and come up with new designs for materials and ideas and things like that. So ultimately you will connect all of the results of the graph to an output node, and then if you go back up to your create new substance graph, and you create something like a metallic roughness. So if you're creating a material graph, that will create all the channels you need to create a material that uses the metallic workflow, like in another 3D software. And so you can see you have all the channels you might need. So base color, normal, roughness, metallic, ambient occlusion, and height. And so if you have your substance graph sent to an output node, you can then bring that whole node as a package into another graph like this one. And you can see how we have what we created in the first substance graph now in this other graph. And so you can just double click on them to switch between them. And if we go in here and we want some of these parameters to be accessible in the other graph that we've started. So back in here, if we want to like have some of these attributes be accessible, we just go to the node that we want and go to the attribute, and you can click expose as new graph input, and then you can label it and change a bit of how it operates, but the defaults for this example are going to be fine. And then we will go back to the material graph we just created, and now we can see that this this parameter is exposed on this level. So it's just another kind of layer of that procedural workflow, right? So you could create like kind of your own node, your own chunk of functions that you bring in then into another graph that then you could continue to make changes to and combine with other things. So let's just go back to our first graph, and again, if we want to see this, we click on the node we're outputting, view in 3D view, and tell it just a channel. Base color for us works fine. And so, any part of learning a new software is just, kind of learning some of the functions of things. And especially in a software like this, you kind of just have to just slowly expand your vocabulary of the nodes and their functions. So obviously, like we said, noise is going to be the basis of probably a lot of things that you do. And another thing that will probably be pretty frequently used is things just basic geometric forms and shapes. And there's a great node for that, which is called the shape node. And it has just a lot of cool functions that are built in that will help you to just create patterns and things like that, or create just shapes that you can use for whatever you want to use. And then with kind of pattern generation, there's an even more flexible node called the tile generator, and it has I think all of the same presets that the shape node has, and then has a lot more parameters for modifying how they are repeated in a pattern. So we can increase the number of them, we can change the scale, we can randomize the scale. So one of the powerful functions of the tile generator is the ability to randomize a lot of the attributes. So you have offset, you can randomly offset the positions, and the rotation won't matter because these are circles, randomizing the kind of luminance or opacity of the circles, and the random mask function will basically just mask a certain percentage of the shapes. So the tile generator is going to be a really frequently used node for you, as well as noise, and probably another really important node to know is the blend. So it allows us to combine, combine layers. And one thing to note is that, like obviously we're working completely in grayscale right now, because grayscale is grayscale and color are handled separately. So if you try to combine them with like a blend node, they won't work. So just kind of keep that in mind. Like with grayscale, you're only working with grayscale, and with color, you're kind of only working with color. So the blend node, we can't see anything because the blend mode is set to copies. So basically the foreground is just being copied here, and the background isn't really being considered. So if we change the blend mode to add, we can see we're getting, the addition of the white values on top of our foreground. We could do subtract, and you can see we have some cool shapes and patterns starting to form. Like, this is not anything like I had intentionally created, but this already to me like looks cool and like something you could already make use of, like in a material, as like a layer of color. If you kind of extracted just the white values and used that as a color layer on something, I think that would be really cool. And then again, like we talked about, you can change any of these parameters at any stage to alter the look of things, and it's so flexible in that in that sense. And you can get all kinds of interesting effects by playing with blending modes and just modifying parameters. So that is kind of how you build the complexity. You just layer up various effects, and then you can, once you have a kind of a network, you just can modify things and swap out nodes and noises and things like that to achieve whatever you're after. And so back to the blend node, the third input is for opacity. So that's basically where we can create a mask that tells it exactly how to blend between the two layers. So we'll use noise again. Surprise, surprise. We love noise. And this time we'll use a different noise. Let's try Gaussian. Change the scale a little bit and throw that into the opacity. So we can't really see anything changing right now because our blending mode, for when we use the opacity, we kind of want to start with the copy, because that will show us pretty much exactly what you would think would happen with the blending node. So we can see they're being combined, but it's a little hard to tell because the Gaussian noise is so smoothly transitioning between the two. So if we want a little bit more contrast, we can use a threshold, and so that will basically just take a range of grayscale values and convert them into 0 to 1, basically. And it has a couple modes that you can play with. So you can switch the black and white values. So if we then put that in, we can see we have this very stark contrast between the two inputs. And again, another really frequently used node is the blur node. So we can, we're kind of taking this, adding in contrast, and then blurring the edges out a little bit, so we can have maybe a little bit softer of a transition between those two layers. And then this is all being output here. And so if we go back to our material, our material graph, we can see that all of that has been updated in this node that we brought in earlier, and it is all being sent to the base color. And so once you have a setup that you like in grayscale, you can also convert that to color by using a gradient map and having it set to color, and then going into the gradient editor and adding in whatever colors that you want to add, and just play around with things. This is the fun part, just playing around. And then on our base color, then we put that into our base color, and then we have that being shown up in our 3D view. And then so the base color is the only input that you will be using color for. The others all take grayscale values, right? So like you would expect, normal values, roughness values, metallic, height, all that is going to take grayscale. So if we plug this into the normal, we can see we have a bump map basically being generated for us based on those values. And same thing with and we can change the intensity, which is great, just to have a slider to change the intensity of that. And we can also throw this same value into the roughness. You can see that automatically just updates. And same thing with the metallic. We can just quickly preview all of these changes on our 3D object, which is really cool. And you can change the object as well. So there's options to do that. And I think you can probably change, other aspects. We don't need to go into that right now because this preview is totally sufficient for us. So if after the fact also we want to change these grayscale values, we can use a gradient map set to grayscale, go into our gradient editor, and change these values in a little bit if we want, like for our roughness, let's say, maybe we don't want as extreme of values. We just kind of want a little bit more clamped in. Or same thing, maybe for our metallic, we don't want it as drastic of a change between these two, right? And yeah, you get a pretty good just sense of everything working in this 3D view. I mean, it's not amazingly perfect, but I think it gives you a really good idea of how this will probably end up looking when you bring it into a 3D software like Cinema 4D. So that's kind of the basics of just generating these abstract materials and then piping them out into material channels that you can use. And so we are in our substance graph here, and you can see the type is set to standard material, which is what we want, and we can go export outputs as bitmaps. So this is going to allow us to get out our images for using these materials in another software, right? So I have mine set to JPEG, and you can choose which one. So maybe we don't need ambient occlusion or height data for this one. We just want the base color, normal, roughness, and metallic. And you can change the color space. By default, they should be set up correctly. And then you export the outputs, and you can use those images in whatever you want. So it's a very straightforward workflow, and you bring in the textures into whatever 3D software you use. So I think it's very powerful software, and especially for creating these kind of abstract materials, because there are so many procedural options that you have available to you. And I think it's, something where most of the fun is just in playing around, with the combinations of various, nodes, and kind of seeing where your inspiration takes you while you play with these kinds of things. So now I can hop into Cinema 4D just to kind of show you basically what I did with the render I showed you at the beginning of the video. So in Cinema 4D, I basically just created a rope sim. So I just cloned a bunch of splines, and added the rope tag, and then I put a rope belt on the base of this tube I created, or I think on the base of the tube I created, and so they're staying in place. And then basically I applied my material to those, and so I have the image previews turned off because I think it slows everything down. But you can see here I have my materials. All of the maps we talked about just pipe directly out into this into these textures. So my normal map, my roughness, my metallic, and my base color are all in here, right? And the other thing that I did was just create a vertex attribute to blend between the ends of these materials. So I had my splines that I cloned for the rope sim, and I just dragged them into a vertex map to have to tell it where along the spline I wanted to have the vertex map. So you can drag splines in and do things like that if you sweep something around them. So then I basically just blended between a glassy material at the end and the substance designer material that I had created on the bottom. And I played a little bit with the sweep caps to create this, kind of interesting end to the swept splines. And so it's really basic. I just kind of wanted to quickly, just kind of show you an example of just like this. I basically just made this quickly to showcase, the material that I made. So yeah, I think that that is where we will just wrap things up for now. So I hope that this gives you kind of some inspiration for creating just all kinds of crazy, abstract, cool materials in Substance Designer. And I'll just look forward to seeing any things that people create, and feel free to ask me any questions. I might not know because I'm not an expert at Substance Designer at all, but all right, well, catch you in the next video. Take it easy.